Hello and welcome to episode number 11 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. My name is Jason Fanelli and I am the Esports and Gaming Insider for Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM Philadelphia, and also on the iHeartRadio app. It's a big one for us this week. We have two fantastic interviews. Once again, one with a member of an esports team that, honestly, 11 episodes took way too damn long to get these people on, but we've finally done it. I'm excited for you to hear that. And another one that tackles a topic that we don't normally talk about here on the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. We talk about the games, talk about the players, talk about the action, but we don't always talk about the business side of esports, and we are going to do that later in the episode. But until then, let's move right in to the 6 in 60 seconds. The Call of Duty League playoffs are down to the Final Four: the Atlanta FaZe, the Dallas Empire, the Chicago Huntsmen, and the London Royal Ravens, with the first match of championship weekend Saturday at 3:30, Atlanta versus Dallas. Elsewhere, Toronto's perfect NBA 2K League season end in semifinals loss to Wizards Gaming. 2K Finals Friday at 7 o'clock on ESPN2 features the Wizards versus the Warriors. Meanwhile, the Overwatch League brackets have been decided. The top four seeds are Philadelphia, San Francisco, Paris, and Florida, the first match taking place September 3rd at 3 p.m. Elsewhere, Gamescom Opening Night Live showcases 38 games from 18 publishers, most notably a new demo in the Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. DC Fandom revealed two Batman Universe games last weekend, Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And finally, an upgraded Nintendo Switch is rumored for release in 2021, including 4K support and more computing power. This has been your 6 in 60 seconds. All right, folks. Yes, that was your 6 in 60 seconds biggest news items of the week. We will go over all of the Gamescom Opening Night Live announcements later on in the episode. But right now, I am very, very excited to be able to say, for the first time in this podcast history, we have the Fusion here. We have been talking about this team ever since I joined the radio station in February. It has been a lot of ups and not many downs this particular season, but now we finally get to talk to somebody from the team. That is Chris Graham, assistant coach, but we all know him as ChrisTFer. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Got to tell you, this has been one hell of a Fusion season, starting all the way back in February with that first Fusion homestand. What was it like for the team and for the coaching staff to play in front of that crowd at the Met? I was there on Saturday. That place was electric. How did the team feel after doing that? Yeah,
it really was, actually. We spoke about it a little bit as a team, and we kind of joked how our season, it peaked in week 1. That was the highlight of the entire season. Even with all of the wins and success we've had, I think, to be honest, nothing's quite beat that moment. For me, that was always the goal of when I got into esports, and something like that to come and play in front of a home crowd with thousands of people who genuinely really, really want you to win it. It's kind of a dream. And the weekend itself really couldn't have gone much better, not just the results, but how well everything was organized and how well everything was run and how good the crowd was. They were really up for it, which is good. I'd heard a lot about Philly crowds before I came, but I can say that they lived up to the expectations.
I'm glad to hear that. And you also won, which helps. You don't usually incur the wrath of a Philly crowd unless you're doing poorly, which you cannot say about this season at all, especially after COVID forced everything online. It was probably very disappointing to not have those live matches anymore, especially, as you said, when you got the taste of it and then weren't able to do it again. But you did have to adjust in order to go online. What did the team do to be able to adjust to the new format and make sure to maintain that hot start?
Yeah, it was definitely a shame that we missed out on a lot of live events. I think we were really looking forward to various ones across the world. And far as change, what's interesting about esports and maybe Overwatch is almost everybody who started played online originally, right? So for the first maybe over 2 years of my career, both playing and coaching, I did it online.
Sure.
So it wasn't a situation where it was new to everybody. It was kind of just going back to our roots. It made some aspects of the job harder in terms of coaching, especially I find that if I'm coaching Korean players, communicating with them is a lot easier when it's in person because I can rely on body language or I can pick up when they don't understand what I'm saying, for example. And when
Sure.
it's online, it's a lot harder to do that. But for the most part, I think we understood that this was just the way it was going to be, and it didn't change our end goals and what we were trying to accomplish. So we just marched forward as usual.
You certainly did. And the first example of marching forward has to be Carpe, who is having himself an MVP season as dictated by his MVP nomination. So how much easier does it make coaching the team when you have a guy like that who you can basically depend on in any situation that arises, no matter what?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it makes it very easy, like as long as if we pull any sort of mediocre strategy together, we know that Carpe, he can make it work and he can win his fights and do stuff that we shouldn't win,
Yeah.
He also makes our job harder because I think he's one of those players that he sets himself to such expectations and such standards that he makes sure everybody, including coaches, abides by those standards,
Sure.
So he definitely, even as coaches, he pushes us to make sure if you're coaching Carpe, you have to be ready to do a lot of feedback and a lot of coaching because that's the standards he expects. But obviously, I'd rather have it that way than the opposite,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that attention to detail is what makes him so good. The fact that even at his status and with the success that he's had, he's still willing to evaluate his game on a basis like that. It's very, very, very cool. But also on the other end, you have a brand new rookie player in Alarm who is one of the best success stories of this entire season specifically. To what do you attribute his immediate success with the Fusion? How quickly did he gel with the team before making his debut? And did he just seem like a natural fit right from the jump? Or was there some adjustment that had to be made?
Almost no adjustments. We
Wow.
did we call it a boot camp where we all went to Korea before the start of the season and so we could get some practice in before it really began.
Sure.
And almost immediately we knew that he was something special. With Alam, I can probably say he's the most naturally talented and gifted player I've ever worked with or played against or seen.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. It's difficult to understand, but he just has a certain awareness about everything that's happening around him. It's almost like he's playing a top-down game when everyone else is playing an FPS. Like he's constantly aware of everything that needs to happen. And I think that's something they say about a lot of sports. Like the greatest players make the game look easy, and I think Alarm's one of those players where you see him just float in and out of positions where he's no longer in danger or he's in the right position, and it doesn't look that special. But when you understand it, you realize that it's calculated and he's kind of seeing the game on a higher level than most players.
Yeah, he just seems like he's always in the right place whenever he's playing a match. It makes it boggles my mind because in the few times that I've played Overwatch, I always seem to be in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So just watching him flawlessly execute this game is amazing. Now you also had Chipsa, who was a big deal before the season started, but really hasn't seen a lot of time. Is it just a matter of finding the right moment for him to succeed, or are you worried about him jumping off the map like he did in his first match?
Well, when you bring in a Doomfist specialist, it's difficult to play him if there hasn't been a Doomfist meta, and
Sure.
the entire season, Doomfist hasn't been a strong character. We tried, obviously, at one point we gave him a game and we tried to integrate him into scrims in an attempt to say that, if a Doomfist meta does come around, then at least he understands how to play with the team and he can be ready. But it never came.
Right.
I see very few. I don't think it's going to come for playoffs. So
Right.
yeah,
So we might not see him.
in some ways, yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's an insurance policy that you didn't have to pay on, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And I get that. Has he been working on any other characters to try and get in, or is he just sticking to Doomfist at the moment?
Now, we didn't need him to learn other characters. One
Okay.
thing that was good about the signing of Phil was that at least when it wasn't a Doomfist meta, he could still provide value to everybody via streaming. And we obviously have like 4 other DPS, including 2 flex DPS, who cover almost all of the other heroes.
Right.
So we weren't trying to force him in. We just kind of say if the meta's right for him, we can make it work. And if not, then he's still an asset to the team and everybody. And he's not like taking up scrim practice and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Great. But yeah, it seems to have worked out in those couple matches that we've seen. And also, he has been the face of the Fusion on Twitter when he won the Doomfist tournament. That was great. I see him on there all the time. Really, really great asset to the team. I agree with you 100%. So let's talk about recent success. Let's talk about that last game of the season a couple weeks ago. You had run into San Francisco Shock a couple of times. They had gotten you every single time, including in the Countdown Cup. And then all of a sudden, this last regular season game for you, you went out and turned them inside out. You just completely dominated them the entire match. What did getting that monkey off of the team's back, how did that feel for the team morale-wise?
There's a certain irony in that we built Shock up as our rivals, as our opponents, right? And you kind of, when you see you finally overtaking and beating your rivals, you expect it to be into some 3-2 2-hour-long brawl back and forth, you know?
Exactly.
Then to beat them in the manner we did, it was almost like, oh, that's all there is to it. But obviously, once we took a step back and we realized the achievement and what it meant, like you said, that means we've now beaten every single team in North America. There's no team that hasn't lost to us. Means that the Shock players now know that if they come against Fusion, they can lose, and they can lose hard. And it knows that if we come across Shock in the playoffs, we can win, and we can win hard, which is incredibly important for everybody's mentality.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's awesome. I'm getting goosebumps hearing that out of you, my man. So having beaten the Fusion in that match, it also means that you are now the number one seed in North America. As you said, you've beaten everybody, but that brings with it some added pressure, especially in this city where number one seeds don't always go the way they should. So what is the team preparing to do to deal with that added spotlight?
Well, I must confess, I don't know the history of number one seeds in the sports teams in the city. So
it's not good.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. It's not good. It's not great.
We really aren't changing too much of the way we do business. Obviously, we've come across like somewhat of a winning formula so far. So it's just to continue working hard and keep trying to do the same things. I don't think we need to change too much.
Now, I guess my biggest worry about biggest hurdle I worry about is the delay between your final match and when you actually play in the playoffs. Because if I'm reading this right, top four seeds aren't until the second weekend. Am I seeing that correctly?
I think we'll probably likely play, Saturday in 2 weeks' time. So maybe 13 days will be our first game from now.
Okay, so that's a decent delay, especially coming off such a big win and such an emphatic win. You're going to be scrimming all the time, I understand, but what are you going to, I assume, but what are you going to be doing to keep that momentum going all the way until when you can finally play your playoff game?
I see the break as an absolute positive for us.
Oh, do you?
We were able to take a week off break the week previous, which I think almost no other team in the league was able to do, which means that we're now ready to push ourselves and to work hard again. A lot of teams, either because they had a lower seed or they still had games, had to continue either practicing the old patch or to sacrifice the old patch for the new patch this week, which means a lot of our competition is going to have been playing for 6-7 weeks straight, which is going to lead to a lot of stress, a lot of burnout, whereas we can say is we ended the season on an exceptionally high note, and then at the same time everybody hopefully is well rested and is ready to go make that final push. So we absolutely see the break as an advantage for us, and we're really happy of the way the schedule and the format went.
Now, do you feel the same way about the break between should you make the final two at North America and the grand final top four? Would you have rather have played that through as well?
That's going to be less fun because that's almost certainly going to involve us having to do some sort of quarantine in Korea. In these hotels where you can't leave your room or whatever. So we have to pray that Blizzard or Fusion find a way to get us the ability to practice from the hotel. So we're not just spending 2 weeks not doing anything, just bored alone in a hotel room. So it won't be as fun as the week off we've just had. But that's the job, and our end goal is obviously to win it also. So whatever it takes, truly.
Yeah, that is not a consideration I had thought of until just now. Since you're traveling there, the whole team will have to. Where are you playing now? Are you in Philly?
Yeah, we're all in Philly now.
Okay.
I think that our Korean players won't have to quarantine, at least in a hotel. They'll be able to go home and do it, so for them it's no problem.
Okay.
But for me and the rest of the Western guys, we're gonna have to.
Yeah, you're gonna have
go
to
through some sort of quarantine.
Well, I hope they have comfy beds at the very least. But yeah, so that is tough. So yeah, I'm hoping that there is a solution there for you, and it's not just like, oh well, deal with the hotel Wi-Fi, because we all know how that works. But no matter what happens. This city is proud of you. We are very excited for this number one seeded team to rip through the North American bracket, get to that grand finals, and show the world that the Fusion are here to stay. Chris, thank you so much for your time and your words. I so am very much looking forward to this. Good luck to you, Philly Power.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Yes, there he is, ChrisTFer Graham. Chris Graham, the assistant coach, of the Philadelphia Fusion. Man, I can't wait for those playoffs to start. We finally got our first game time. It is Saturday, September 5th at 3 p.m. We don't know who we're going to play yet, but the fact that they're even coming up is a beautiful thing, and I'm really excited to see what that team can do. This is the third year for the Overwatch League. They were in the first ever finals. I'd love to see them get back for the third one. But now, let's not talk about what might happen in the future, or in the distant future. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the near future. Get out those glasses and have yourself a taste of what's on tap. First up, we have Madden NFL 21, the latest in the storied Madden NFL franchise. Lamar Jackson adorning the cover. Also, Wasteland 3, an isometric top-down RPG set in a post-apocalyptic United States, this time in Colorado. Looks very interesting. Project Cars 3 from Bandai Namco brings the popular racing franchise into the spotlight once again. And finally, fans of Grand Strategy and the Thinking Man's game will like Crusader Kings 3 from Paradox Interactive, hitting PCs on the 3rd. That is what's on tap this week. Yes, folks, that is what was on tap for this week. Lots of games to consider when you're getting ready for the weekend. Madden 21, obviously a big one for the sports gaming crowd. Wasteland 3 is on my radar. That series has always intrigued me, yet I've never played a single one. I'm wondering if Wasteland will be the intro that I need to get into it. Because now that all three are on Xbox One via Game Pass, it's easy to get into. No better time like the present. And speaking of the present, enough about that. We now have a very exciting interview. I like to talk about the action of esports and the players of esports. It's not very often that I get to talk about the business side of esports. And right now, I have with me from 76 Capital Sports Advisory, Chris Yortsos, the managing director, and Dan Bravato, the president, to talk about esports business. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
We're good. We're good. Excited to be here.
Glad to have you.
Great, Jason. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is an arena that I don't usually get to talk about very often, and there's things that you're probably going to teach me while we're talking today, just because I don't have a lot of exposure to it. So let's get right to it. So I see that you've worked with both the EMLS and Call of Duty leagues in your time. What were your roles in these events? What sort of things did you do to help move them forward?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. This is Dan Bravato, by the way, and I'll kick it off for EMLS. So EMLS is one of my favorite platforms in the traditional sports and gaming world. So for EMLS, we were event producers for them. So traveled around the country, going from city to city to launch their events. So League Series 1, League Series 2, and then culminating with EMLS Cup. So for example, in 2020, my favorite actually, and I'm not being a homer here, my favorite EMLS event we ever did was actually at Union Transfer in Philly this year earlier in January back when we could still leave our houses.
Yeah.
And for EMLS, what we did is it's obviously a top league in the U.S. in terms of FIFA, allowing for qualifying points and also the ability to reach the highest level, obviously, for the players. And so each club is represented by a player, and they compete in a season-long tournament-style bracket, crowning a champion at the end with a champion of each League Series 1, League Series 2, and then a culmination with an eventual total champion of EMLS Cup.
Right.
And so what we did for them was we would travel around the country with them and help them put on the events. So everything from fan experience, sponsorship integration, F&B, food and beverage, and just basically if you ever attend one of the events or attended one of the events, I was the guy running around like crazy, making sure you were having a good time and that the fans were engaged and heavily involved with what we were doing.
Ah, cool. So were you the one in charge of making Jay Ajayi go 0-24?
No, that was a PR move by the union, but I somewhat respect it.
I do too. I respect the game. I don't respect the negative 126 goal differential or whatever it was, but I respect the game.
It's actually funny because he really is a hell of a FIFA player. He just, just like you may be a hell of a Call of Duty player until you go up against, Celium and some of these guys from the CDL. So he is a really good player, but he's, playing in the big leagues now.
Yeah, for sure. And Chris, you worked with the Call of Duty League?
Yeah, Dan and I, we worked closely with one of the franchises here, Minnesota Rocker.
Ah, yes.
I previously worked for the Minnesota Vikings and got close to the person who became their eventual COO, Brett Diamond, and he actually hired Dan and me to run some sponsorship stuff for them. We did event management. We did some ticket sales strategy work, a little bit of help on content creation as well. And it was a really amazing experience. Minnesota Rocker was host of the very first ever CDL event back in January.
That
so
they
as
were.
Dan mentioned, when we were allowed to have people in attendance, we had about 10 to 12,000 people over the course of 3 days, which was an incredible experience. We had every single team out here to launch Call of Duty League. But yeah, that was our involvement with CDL. And then we carried on with Minnesota Rocker, helping them, like I said, from everything from sponsorship procurement to some strategy stuff related to ticket sales, related to revenue generation, to content creation. Really great experience holistically from the last few months.
Yes, you both have hands in many different pots. It's not an easy feat, like you said, Dan. You'd be the one running around with pulling your hair out at every of these events, making sure everybody's having a good time and dealing with all the stresses. So there's a lot to take in, and I guess many people don't realize just how much work goes into an esports event. They think it's just people sitting around playing video games, but there's a lot more to it. So before esports, you both mentioned you worked in traditional sports. Chris, your time with the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL. And Dan, I read you were working with Manchester City and NASCAR, among others. What makes esports specifically stand out to you when compared to other more traditional sports?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and honestly, the reason how I ended up in esports is about 5 years ago when I worked in Detroit for Dan Gilbert and Rocket Mortgage. I worked on their sports marketing team, and they wanted someone to explore esports and gaming. And I'm a gamer myself, more of a console guy than a PC guy, so that'll show you how big of a gamer I am when you really get into it.
Console represent.
Exactly. But so they said, hey, we need someone to explore esports, and I had been reading a ton about it and was a player myself, and I was like, yeah, I'm totally into this. So I started doing some research. I went to League of Legends quarterfinals in Chicago for LCS. I went to 2K events. I went kind of all over the place, and it was really neat. And I kind of fell in love with the way the fans engage and the content, right? Because I grew up watching traditional sports, whether it was, my grandpa had a newspaper, had the radio, my dad might have watched SD, I watched HD, and now we have streaming and we have Twitch and we have YouTube. And it's just a completely different way that these fans are consuming and engaging. You may be watching Nick Merckx or Tim the Tatman and be able to, chime in, send a sub, send a donation, and be, hey, Nick, why are you using the MP5? Oh, I'm using the MP5 because of X, Y, and Z. And that's just this unprecedented access where, I can't go up to, whoever it may be, Dalvin Cook. I'll throw in a Homer Vikings example from our relationship with them. But I can't go to Dalvin and say, hey, Dalvin, why are you using those cleats? Why are you using those gloves? That type of interaction doesn't exist. And I think that's what makes fans of gaming and esports at such an affinity and such a high level that you don't see in traditional sports because of the engagement and the way that they consume the content.
That's, definitely fair. Chris?
Yeah, I think I worked in the NFL for a number of years, first with the Minnesota Vikings, then with the LA Rams for a short stint. And the world of traditional sports is so different from the world of esports. We've talked about this quite a bit, but when you look at how traditional sports teams engage and also monetize, they do so through a number of different mechanisms, right? You have media money that's split amongst each of the NFL teams, and that's
Sure.
money that comes in from ESPN, CBS, Fox, NBC. You have money that comes in from premium and ticket holders, and you have sponsorship dollars that come in, and there's been this kind of establishment in the traditional sports world of these are the three main ways that you can generate revenue. In esports, it's very different. You don't necessarily have these massive media dollars that are being funneled to each of the teams, right? Like you had Twitch, which I think had a $90 million over 2-year sponsorship for the Overwatch League, and reportedly YouTube paid $160 million over 3 years for CDL and for Overwatch. And when you break it down, that's a fraction compared to what some of the traditional sports teams get from their media pie or split of the pie, right? And so for us, there's this really unique opportunity to do what we have done in our careers, which is helping teams monetize through sponsorship. And what we learned is, as Dan mentioned, this audience is extremely engaged. They're very, very passionate, and they're very finicky. However, if you have a brand that comes in that tries to apply the same standards that work in traditional sports, if you try to apply that to esports, fans are gonna suss that out really quickly. One of my favorite examples is, I believe for a Dota 2 championships in Europe, Mercedes-Benz got involved, and they tried to apply the same type of marketing activations that had worked in traditional sports. They brought a fleet out. There was a break in the action where one of the announcers said, "Man, that play was as smooth as the Mercedes class Benz," or whatever it was, and fans just trashed them on Reddit and Twitter. And what was amazing is Mercedes really engaged with them on those platforms, on Twitter and on Reddit, and actually changed brand sentiment around entirely. And by engaging with people on this one-to-one basis, they were able to build brand affinity. And it's these amazing little case studies where brands like Mercedes that have been involved in sports marketing for many, many years, they have to approach esports very different than it is in traditional sports. And I think one of the things that's been so exciting about this space for me and Dan is helping to educate some of these brands who are very interested in taking some of their smaller budgets and shifting it into esports and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and helping plan their roadmap so that they do have a little bit more success than some of their competitors. But I love that Mercedes example just because it shows that they were able to be super nimble and win the hearts and minds of a lot of very finicky esports fans.
Yes, because if there's one thing that's very true about gamers and social media in general, it's if you do the wrong thing, you're going to hear about it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So the fact that they were able to be so flexible and actually listen is rare, I think. I don't think enough companies do that. It definitely helped them out in the long run. But I do remember hearing about that Mercedes kerfluffle, let's call it. That was a fun Dota 2 tournament, yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the sports advisory. It just launched, if I am not mistaken, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we're about a month old at this point, so just a baby.
Just a baby. So you're coming in not only as a new advisory, but also bringing in this still relatively new industry in esports with you from the jump. So what is it about the current esports landscape, and it might be something we've already talked about, that makes it such a valuable arena for these kind of pursuits?
Yeah, so with our background on the traditional sports side, we made the jump over to esports and gaming a couple of years ago and haven't looked back since. And we're just so passionate about where the space is going. And there's been this correlation between traditional sports and esports, whether that's through owners of traditional sports teams investing in buying esports teams or orgs, whether that be live events at Madison Square Garden, the Barclays Center, Overwatch Grand Finals down in Philly as well. All over the place. And so it's just such a natural tie-in, and Chris and I saw what was happening in the esports and gaming world, and we were just so into it and so passionate about what was being built and how it was being built. And so with 76 Capital, we decided that there was an opportunity to help the traditional sports world in the esports and gaming world, because I'm sure some of the fans of your podcast have had conversations with people who work or are involved in esports and gaming, and they meet them and they're like, this guy has never picked up a controller in his life. This guy doesn't know anything about esports and gaming. And we see that all the time, and it really drives us nuts. I mean, I see it with some of the biggest brands who are being advised by people on gaming and esports who don't know anything about esports and gaming, and it's just, it drives me nuts. So we saw this opportunity with 76 to be that liaison between the traditional sports world, brands, teams, league owners, leagues themselves, on being that resource for them to help them understand the gaming and esports world from the perspective of not only folks who understand the esports and gaming world, but folks who come from their world as well in the traditional sports side and can really help them kind of educate and learn the space the best they can. So that was our real passion point for getting involved on the esports and gaming side with 76.
Chris, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the other things is, it's very rare that you see a sport, and I'll use a sport, in esports, there's been so much money that has been funneled to the top level where you have these professional organizations that have these massive valuations, but there really hasn't been that trickle-down effect to, the collegiate level, the high school level. You're starting to see these pathways for kids who are interested in maybe going professional, but if they don't go professional, there's still many pursuits above and beyond just becoming a professional in your particular game title. And one of the things that was really attractive, at least to me, about 76 is they make some very sound investments across the space. They're looking to help build the infrastructure for esports. One of their portfolio companies, Nerd Street Gamers, what they do in the space to really help stand up esports in various parts throughout the country. Some neighborhoods that could really use esports and being able to connect to that community. And I think that's one thing that's really attractive to us is really kind of building the picks and axes to really help stand esports up in various communities throughout the U.S. above and beyond just what we're doing on the professional circuit, so to speak.
Picks and axes. I'm going to assume it's a Fortnite reference.
There you go. You got to tie it all together.
Nerd Street Gamers, definitely a name I've heard in and around the Philly area. I believe they have a part in, or if they're not completely operating, local host down the city, correct?
That is correct. That is their facility. And,
yes. Have not made my way down there yet. I'm looking forward to, as soon as we can go outside of our house. That's my kind of place where you can just go chill and play games for a while. There used to be one out in Delaware County by the Granite Run Mall by the name of Virtual Rush. I used to love that place, but didn't last very long. It was before the whole esports boom. We're talking 2009, 2010, somewhere in there.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the current landscape of the esports industry. And in particular, there's two types of leagues in these organizations that I have seen. So far, you have your city-based leagues, like your Call of Duty League, your Overwatch League, which has teams in Philadelphia and Los Angeles and Minnesota and stuff like that. And then you have leagues where the organizations themselves, your Cloud9s, your Team Solo Mids, there's FlyQuest, there's the one I'm thinking of. They are the names of the teams. For me, personally, if you're trying to get people to invest in your esports company, whether financially or emotionally, you have to have that city-based loyalty. You have to be able to give them something to latch onto in a traditional way, even if it's a bridge to esports in general. You may have never heard of Overwatch, but you hear that Philadelphia has a team, you may pay attention. Maybe you'll learn something. Whereas the leagues that are run by the organizations where you have 100 Thieves playing Cloud9, people are like, who the heck are these people? Do either of you have a preference? Do you find that to be more efficient one way or the other, or do you see opportunity in both?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll take the first half of it, and I think we certainly see opportunity in both. I'll use an example from 100 Thieves and let Chris use the CDL one that we're both thinking of right now, I'm sure. And with 100 Thieves, so we worked with them early on their Rocket Mortgage sponsorship. And 100 Thieves is a great example of a brand that has built from, a vision that Nadeshot had, and they've transitioned into this massive, massive media empire now at this point. And what they did is they built a team that was centered around their brand, right? 100 Thieves is a brand, from their apparel to their streamers to everything in between. People associate with 100 Thieves and feel passionate for 100 Thieves, similar to how you talk about, you may feel passionate for the Philly Fusion or the Vancouver Titans, whatever it may be in your home market. You have that same passion for 100 Thieves. And I just think they've done such an excellent job building that brand out. And so you may not be a, huge League of Legends fan, but because they're rocking the 100 Thieves jersey and that's their team, you'll support them.
Sure.
So I think it works on that side if you build a brand versus building just a team. I think you really need to focus on building a brand and what your brand stands for. And I just think 100 Thieves has done a great job doing that. And then on the city side, I'll let Chris take that one, but I think there's a great example here that's close to our hearts.
Yeah, for sure. Having worked for for the Vikings for a number of years. I'm originally from LA, and moving up to Minnesota, the purple is just woven into the fabric of this community here. And in esports, there really hasn't been a major esports event prior to Minnesota Rocker kind of raising its hand in like 1,500 miles of Minneapolis. And I think what Rocker has been doing, and I like to use them as an example because they're really trying to build a community here, and they're trying to be very inclusive. And I really do buy into what they're building from that perspective. They're working with colleges, they're working with high schools, they're really trying to build and make grassroots efforts to connect with this community. They made a really sound investment in former Optic personality Ashley Glassell. Her gamer tag is Midnight. She's from Minnesota, and as soon as they launched this franchise, they realized Ashley has this massive audience. We need to have her as part of our organization just because she can speak authentically to the community. And what they're trying to do is, win the hearts and minds one fan at a time here in Minnesota and really build that brand that way so that it becomes synonymous with, what the Vikings have done over the past 60 years in the NFL. And to take it a step further, the facilities that they're building out in Eagan, Minnesota, the Wilfs purchased this plot of land that's, 230 acres, and they nestled the Vikings headquarters right in the middle of that. Well, you look 100 yards away from that, and they built this amazing, incredible facility for the Call of Duty team. 13,000 square feet, where they want to be able to host, watch parties. They want to be able to host community nights, invite high schools, invite colleges to, interact with the team, interact with the athletes that they have on Minnesota Rocker. And I think, having those grassroots types of efforts helps to build the brand and helps to cement it here in the state. And I think, it's the long-term play for the Wilfs and for the Minnesota Rocker as a whole. And, I think we're big believers in what they're building. We're excited to see, the progress over the next couple of years, but they've certainly planted their flag for, we want to help do esports and do gaming the right way here in Minnesota and really provide an opportunity for folks to connect with us who really haven't had this professional organization, in the past.
Oh, I love hearing that. And when you look right here in South Philly, they're building that Fusion Arena in the heart of the sports complex. You put that anywhere else in the city, people say, oh, that's cool, Philly's getting an esports arena, that's great. But they're putting it right there, front and center, with the sports stadiums in Philadelphia. That has already turned heads. The fact that they view it to be on that equal footing, I think will be huge once it's built and they can start filling it, not unlike how the Rocker are doing it out in Minnesota. So talking about opportunity now, is there a section of competitive gaming, maybe a genre of gaming or a game specifically, that you find to be currently underrepresented and perhaps an area of opportunity?
Yeah, I think there's a couple avenues here. I think my favorite title that's underrepresented, in my opinion, is Rocket League. And I think they're doing a great job of fixing that with the new structure for RLCS. And I think it's just such a family-friendly sport. It's a ton of fun. It's easy to consume. It's easy to watch. For, when you talk about ESPN and ABC putting Overwatch Grand Finals on ABC and ESPN,
yep.
If my grandma tunes into that, like, she's going to be like, what is going on here? But if you put Rocket League and I'm like, Grandma, these cars are playing soccer, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, it's like, okay, I get it now, right? And I think it's a really family-friendly game. I think it's a very fun game, and I think it's a very easy-to-understand game. So curious to see how the new structure of RLCS plays out and where they see it with that. And second, I think, is in minority gamers and female gamers, because there are so many female gamers, so many minority gamers. I think Call of Duty is an excellent representation. I believe it's one of the more diverse leagues out there. And it's just so great to see that kind of stuff. And I think there's opportunity for these folks and for women as well. And we're seeing it a lot. The HBCUs are announcing leagues, which I think is great, and a lot of female-based teams and female streamers and influencers. And I think gaming, the beauty of gaming is community. And you know that firsthand, obviously. And it's all about just being a part of something. And I think when people exclude, you're going against the purpose of gaming. Gaming has its toxic moments, but it's a community. And like one of my favorite things that I tell people is when I first got into esports and gaming, I didn't know League of Legends, and I couldn't figure out League of Legends. And I would beat myself up and say, I gotta understand League. I gotta understand League. And to this day, I don't understand League. I don't play League. I don't get it. I can't figure it out. I don't like it, quite frankly. But that's okay because I'm part of the gaming community.
Sure.
You don't have to like one game to be a part of the community. You can like Fortnite or Call of Duty or Fallout or whatever it may be. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about gaming is as long as we're gaming, we're all friends here. It doesn't matter what you're playing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for inclusion in the space.
I agree with that, and I wish more people thought that way. And to be completely honest with you, to show some community right now with you, I don't know the first thing about League either.
There we go.
I'm just not very good at it. Chris, anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, less on, the underrepresented games. I think, one of the things Dan and I observed when we first got involved in the space is really the power of the individual. We come from the world of traditional sports, and typically the way the fan engages with that sport is through the team first and the player second. And in the world of gaming and esports, it really is the personality first. I was listening to a webinar earlier today, and one of the guys mentioned that these gamers, they're not, you can't really look at them the same way that you look at like a musical artist who puts out a couple albums and then goes on tour for a few months, and that's their level of engagement with fans. These guys and girls are 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're always putting out content. And the ones who have had a ton of success are ones who are very nimble and can play a variety of different games and build that audience, one person at a time. And I think it's been fascinating over the past few months to see how gaming and esports has risen to the level of the mainstream audience. I mean, you're seeing some of these folks pull in, concurrent viewers of 45,000 and plus. And, one of the things that we laughed at but realized there's a ton of power there is look at what the guys at Barstool did. When you had Big Cat streaming NCAA football from 2014, and he's pulling in 155,000 viewers. I mean, that's a massive, massive audience.
It is.
So it goes to show you that there's such a power in being able to connect with that individual. As Dan mentioned, you can, hey, what loadout are you running? And it's available right there in the chat. So one of the things we've really been observing is finding ways that we can help these influencers and these individuals kind of build their brand and kind of expand this audience, whether it's, you look at what Tim the Tatman was doing with Ezekiel Elliott a few weeks ago. Tim's a huge Cowboy fan. Zeke's a big gamer. Combining those audiences and watching now fans of Tim are fans of Zeke, now fans of Zeke are fans of Tim, and they're able to grow their brands that way, which I think is phenomenal. And, one of the things Dan touched on is, the representation of, minorities and females in gaming. I love to see that explosion here. And I think as we start to look at what, how this trickles down to the college and high school levels, and once these things become a little bit more streamlined, that's something I'm also very interested in seeing, tying curriculum to esports. One of the things we talked about earlier is there's so many pathways to developing a career that somehow tangentially or otherwise touches esports. There's folks who are behind the camera. There are folks who are in front of the camera. There's casters. There's people like myself and Dan who come from, the sales world where esports teams need folks who understand how to drive revenue. There's so many different careers that can be spawned out of the world of gaming and esports, and being able to tie that back to curriculum in the classroom, learning that at a very young age, and realizing that there are some very amazing careers that can be spawned out of esports above and beyond the professional circuit. And I think as we kind of look the next few years, once the high school scene starts to wrap its mind around tying curriculum to competitions, and then you're starting to see colleges. I think 130 plus colleges are now offering scholarships for esports. That didn't exist 10 years ago, right?
Nope.
So this slow pathway towards finding success through gaming, whether it's on the professional circuit or whether it's finding careers, that's something that I'm keeping a really close eye on, because I think someone's going to figure it out. And hopefully me and Dan have something to do with it.
Hopefully, I would wish that on both of you. I hope it'll be. I hope you would be at the forefront of it, the front of the line. In fact, that goes right into my last question. In the future of esports, in a world where esports hits the mainstream and becomes the biggest thing in the world, with you guys at the front, what would you like to see from that format moving forward? How would you like to get it there? What would you do to get it to that promised land?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question, but a good one. I think just seeing more openness and more accessibility. I mean, you think about that. That's one of my favorite things about gaming is you see, the NFL. You need cable. You need this. You need a subscription. You could just hop on Twitch right now. You just need an internet connection, and you could watch X, Y, and Z. Or you go to YouTube and watch CDL and Overwatch. And I think that accessibility is key and has to continue. I think what we'll see, in my opinion, is, and why I think gaming is so fun, is it takes these it's nimble and it takes these moments and is able to leverage them. And using Warzone as an example, the battle royale from Activision Blizzard under Call of Duty, is they have leveraged this into including it in CDL on Sundays for Warzone Royales and things like that. And I think when you're able to be at the precipice of a moment, and that moment was battle royales with Warzone, or might be Fall Guys doing something really cool right now, whatever it may be, like, to be able to pivot and do something really cool and nimble, I think is what will keep this world going. And it's where they'll leave traditional sports kind of behind, is that, you know, as the NFL, and you talk about it a lot with the ratings and things like that, which are going up and then they're going down, they're going up again, is Fall Guys is popular this week. Great. Let's sell the heck out of Fall Guys and put all the Fall Guys content we can. Next week, it could be something completely different. It could be something else after that. And I think as long as we keep propping up these really cool moments and these really cool games and just have fun with it, I think you'll continue to see the growth. And I mean, all you got to do is look at the earnings reports from the last couple quarters, from the gaming companies, from the retailers who are selling this equipment, and it's through the roof. So gaming is here to stay. It was always here, but a lot of people didn't realize it, or they were hiding in quote unquote their mom's basement. But we are very much here, and we've created more and more of us, and it's just going to piss people off more and more the more gamers that are out there. So we love to see that growth.
Just join us. Join us or be left behind. It's that simple.
Yep. 100%.
Chris, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would. I think, you know, when it comes to new technology, I think gaming and esports is always a first adopter. And, you know, without getting too crazy on what we talked about before we went live here, the blending of the digital and physical worlds, as it continues to proliferate over the next few years, I think you're going to see some really amazing things that come out of this side of the business, out of the esports world as a whole. I mean, you saw what Travis Scott was able to do in Fortnite, and holding a concert in there, and you had whatever it was, 26, 28 million people who were able to attend, and he's selling, you know, merchandise in the form of digital skins you can buy for your avatar, and, you know, he's making reportedly $2.5 million off of, you know, selling digital merch, which is amazing. And, you know, when Tim Sweeney was asked what Fortnite was, he said, well, it's a game now, but check back with me in a year. It's going to be very different. And then, you know, they start to integrate concerts, Marshmello first, you know, Travis Scott. And I think the blending of the digital and physical worlds is something that I'm super fascinated by. Again, when you're able to integrate a concert into a game and you're able to have the level of engagement that they had through that concert is staggering. And so I'm really keen on observing this, you know, esports being kind of a first adopter of new technology and this blending of these digital and physical worlds.
Yes, the Travis Scott concert was something else. And the fact, I mean, even Fortnite doing their in-game events, like when the rocket launched and broke the sky in season 4 or 5, I want to say, of the first Fortnite before it became Chapter 2. That was a huge event that happened for everyone at once. Everyone who was playing the game could be included, even if you've played once, even if you've never played at all. You could download it for free and just check it out. That, to me, was fascinating, and I would love to see more of stuff like that. You are right on the money there. Well, gentlemen, it has been a great conversation. I really do appreciate both of your times joining me today. Again, this is Dan Bravato and Chris Yortsos. They are from 76 Capital Sports Advisory. I hope to talk to you again in the future. Have a great rest of your day, fellas.
You too, Jason. Thank you so much
Absolutely,
for the time.
Jason. Thank you very much.
There it is, Chris Yortsos and Dan Bravato of 76 Capital Sports Advisory. Man, that was a cool talk. Not very often I get to dwell on that, like I've said a couple times before, but really some interesting insight on what they've done and how many buckets they really have to fill when it comes to doing an esports program like that. Very, very interesting talk. I hope to talk to them again in the future about the things they're doing in the city of Philadelphia and the world of esports. Because once that Fusion Arena is built, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a hopping spot with tournaments going on every weekend, if not every weekday. And I wonder if they could give me like a room or like a place to put a bed so I don't have to leave. Because I imagine that if things keep going the way they are, I will be there a lot, which I am fine with. But enough about that. That was very nice of them to come on. It's time to move on, though, to the end of the show. We're going to do things a little bit different tonight. We're going to split this final segment up in two, and we are going to start with the speed run, quote unquote, which to Tonight is going to be a recap of Gamescom Opening Night Live, a video presentation that happened at 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, Eastern Time. 38 games saw new trailers or new reveals in the span of 2.5 hours, half an hour pre-show, 2-hour main show, and we had some interesting things come up. So here are some of my big things from this to look into. Quantum Error was in the pre-show. That is a new horror game. I don't usually do horror all that well, but this one looked very interesting. Jurassic World Evolution, which is basically like SimCity, but you're building a Jurassic World park. That's coming to the Switch soon, so that got a nice reveal there. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War showed a cutscene in the beginning of the game where the heroes, the protagonists, are seated in a room and meeting with Mr. President Ronald Reagan himself. Not sure who's doing the voice of it, but it's a very good impression. A little later on, probably the biggest surprise of the day was that Dragon Age, a brand new Dragon Age, was detailed a little bit further by EA and BioWare. That was very, very cool. And I know a lot of people who were crazy about that one. So definitely a cool surprise there. Then we got a new appearance from Sam and Max. Sam and Max are a long-time franchise, going back all the way to old PC. Sam is the big dog, and Max is the rabbit, I believe. I may have that backwards. And they're like detectives, sort of like a detective-style game. That was neat. Looking forward to seeing more about that. For the World of Warcraft crowd, World of Warcraft Shadowlands got a release date of late October. So that is a big one for that group. I've never really got into World of Warcraft myself, but I cannot deny its impact on the gaming world, even now, 16 years after its initial release. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, showed off some missions having to do with before the first game. It's like missions that take you back to the time before the first game happened, when Crash and his sister were being held captive by the evil bad guy, Neo Cortex. Deep Crash Bandicoot lore was not something I expected to say in 2020, but here we are. Star Wars Squadrons, which is a dogfighting spaceship style game where you're driving X-Wings and TIE fighters and stuff like that and battling in space, flying all around planets. That looked really, really cool. The Sims 4 is getting a Star Wars pack complete with costumes and potential props. As my cousin said when I shared it with her, if I could have R2-D2 in my house, that is an absolute win, which I have to agree with. 12 Minutes. Now, 12 Minutes was an interesting game when it was first revealed back at E3 2019. And it's the story of a man and his wife caught in a 12-minute time loop. Things keep happening over and over again every 12 minutes. And as the game progresses, as the loops keep happening, you have to piece together what is going on in this situation. Well, today they announced that this game that we hadn't heard anything from since E3 2019 has added James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe as the voices of the characters, which blew me away. That's quite a slate of acting talent right there to be a part of this game. I dig that very much. Later on, we had Mafia Definitive Edition, an excellent trailer for a game being restored that was on the PS2 back in 2002, coming back to normal current consoles in 2020. Then we had Lemnis Gate, which looked really cool. It's a brand new title coming to new consoles. Fall Guys Season 2, which looks to be medieval themed, so there'll be castles and king costumes, dragon costumes, stuff like that. That looked really neat. The aforementioned Wasteland 3 that we talked about on tap got a new story trailer. A new game in the Medal of Honor franchise coming only to Oculus VR. So hopefully that'll branch out a little more and we can play it in different VR, because Oculus, while cool, is definitely a smaller market than some other VR out there, as I understand it. Turrican, which is a return. Super Turrican was a Super Nintendo game way back in the day. That's making a big comeback. Destiny 2 Beyond Light got a brand new trailer for the Destiny fans. And then finally, probably the most impressive thing was an 8-minute gameplay demo of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart coming to the PlayStation 5 as an exclusive whenever that console launches. And man, can this game do some really cool stuff. There is some really, really, really neat things going on in that game with the rifts and how you can pull one rift up to you and you're automatically like up in that part of the level and it loads immediately. It's just really, really, really interesting stuff, and I'm very much looking forward to that game coming for the PlayStation 5. I've never really played Ratchet & Clank before. That franchise has kind of passed me by a little bit, so if this can bring me in and I can give it a shot, I've heard nothing but great things. I'd love to try it, just haven't had a chance. So maybe this will be the time that I can finally get in there and do this. So that was Gamescom. You can check out the entire presentation on YouTube at the Game Awards YouTube. Game Awards being the major presentation happening every December with Jeff Keighley, who is the Ryan Seacrest of the gaming industry. If you do not know him, I'm sure you've seen his face at least once, especially if we are friends on social media. And with that, that's the speed run portion. It was a quick speed run because the second half of what we're doing tonight is hot off the grill. That's right, folks. It is hot off the grill time. It is time for me to take a look at a recently released game that you may have missed, in this case. Talk about the good and the bad about it and give it an honest review based on my personal opinion of the game. This particular game is one that I really did not have a lot of vested interest in, not for any other particular reason than just not knowing a whole lot about it. But then I saw a couple trailers, and I took a look at the demo that came out during the Xbox Summer Game Fest demo event at the end of July, and I decided I was going to take a dive and see how I like this game. And I got to be honest with you, I'm glad I did. So the name of the game is Raji, an Ancient Epic, developed by a studio called Nodding Head Games, their first game ever. And this is, according to the official description that I received with the code for the game, provided by the publisher, Super.com, who I'm very grateful to have received that from. This is an action-adventure game that thrusts the player into a deadly war set in the stunning Pahari art style of ancient India. Chosen by the gods to stand against a horrific demonic invasion, Raji, a young girl, must defend the human race in a battle between heaven and hell. With a diverse lineup of weapons and powers gifted to her by the gods, you must master skills and think quickly as you adopt strategies to suit each situation in order to restore peace to the human race. So that is the crux of what's going on here. And at first, I cannot say enough about that art style. Each cutscene looks like it's being performed by shadow puppets or marionettes or something like that. It's very striking, very interesting, and the entire game is narrated by the actual Hindu gods Durga and Vishnu. Actual other Hindu gods are mentioned throughout the adventure, like Kali and Brahma. It's a very interesting way to experience a culture that you may not have experienced before, but more on that in a minute. First, the way the game plays. It is top-down, so your camera is set above Raji as she runs through the world. You have a view of what's coming up ahead of you. You can solve puzzles that way and stuff like that. It's a common way to play certain games. Think of like Diablo or games like that where the camera is way up high in the sky, but it's not isometric where it stays on the diagonal. This is this everything is. The camera actually moves with the map to get different angles and stuff like that. But it's the camera position is what I'm trying to get at here. And playing through the game is fun. It's challenging. I found myself having to restart battles more than I really expected to because there are times where you're just overwhelmed with enemies, and there are certain enemies that are particularly difficult to kill. So you have to really think on your feet and use the environmental attacks that you have. Like you can run up a wall, flip off it, and shoot arrows at the ground while you do it, or you can jump up and create this massive lightning field by stabbing the ground with your trident, and it shocks everybody in the field. Very, very cool combat, very interesting stuff. I did enjoy playing through it. It never really felt like it was going too slow or dragging on or anything like that. A couple of moments where the battles were really unfair. There were particular enemies that were really giving me trouble, and I seemed to be hitting them a lot and in great numbers. So a couple of battles I would have maybe taken out an enemy or two, but I eventually got through it. Obviously nothing insurmountable, just annoying at the time. But I think that the action is very good. The gameplay is very cool. The music is awesome. Now, it's authentic Indian music, this kind of things you would expect to hear if you were to ever visit that country. If you know what the Indian style of music or the Hindu style of music sounds like, you can envision where I'm at there. I will say, though, that sometimes, at least in my opinion, who I am not 100% in on the lore and the myths and the culture of the Hindu religion. So if I'm misunderstanding this, then it's on me. But some of the music didn't seem to fit the scene in which it was happening. Like at one point, Raji is running through, like, on the top of a wall of a fortress, and there's all these enemies around that she's like running to get to her next battle, and the music just seemed more upbeat, more like fun and light than I would expect in a moment like that. Now, again, that could just be me not knowing that music is supposed to be that way. There might be something culturally that I'm missing, but for me, it just seemed like sometimes the music didn't fit the scene as it should have. But that is one of my few complaints about this game. And the biggest perk, I think, is being able to experience a culture that I don't normally know, like I've said before, in this medium of video games. And I think it's an interesting way to open up those cultures and people and traditions to a whole new world of people who don't know through video games. When you think about it, video games are really they're American made, they're European made, or they're Japanese made. They're not. You don't really see games branching off from those major cultures. The Indian, the Hindu lore, if it's done respectfully, of course, is, I think, very fertile ground to tell stories in video games, like how Raji does here. I would love to play games with the gods of Hindu, or people like this who are being led by the gods, like a massive sprawling adventure in mythical India with the gods and the demons there. That would be amazing stuff. And Raji just proves that this culture can play host to an effective, fun video game. Notting Head really did a good job of showing their own culture from their own perspective. Now, the studio is located in Pune, India. I believe it's pronounced Pune, P-U-N-E, India. So, knowing that they are authentically from that culture, and then speaking on that culture, gives it even more clout. If it were like me, or some American studio trying to make a game in this culture without consulting anyone, we would know immediately. It would be completely transparent. So, and I for that, I appreciate Notting Head choosing this route and going with a culture and a lore set, and I guess a myth, a set of myths that we in Western cultures might not be familiar with. It's always good to open yourself to new cultures. That's been my opinion my entire life. And anytime a video game can help me do that, I am all aboard. Luckily, in this case, the game that is doing it is fun and unique and engaging and challenging all at the same time. So it will deliver that cultural message in a way where I'm also enjoying myself as well. So, if I had to give Raji and Ancient Epic a score, I would put it firmly in the 8.5 out of 10 frame. It is not perfect. There are moments, like I said, they get a little frustrating. The music doesn't always fit the situation that you're in. And sometimes when you're trying to do one of those acrobatic moves, it doesn't quite catch where it's supposed to, and you end up rolling into an enemy and you're getting smacked around. That's annoying. But those are just minor nitpicks in a grand scheme that is fun. It is engaging. It is an excellent story, well narrated by the people who are voicing Burka and Vishnu. By the way, their voices are fantastic. And I do recommend, if you're looking for something short to play, maybe on a flight or a road trip, or if you just want to experience something you've never experienced before, Raji and Ancient Epic is one that I would absolutely recommend. So that is hot off the grill for this week. Raji, play it. You can play it now on Switch, and it's coming to PC, Xbox One, and PS4 soon. So if you're a Switch fan, jump on that. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And with that, we are at the end of episode 11 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. It has been a good run this week, my friends. We've spoken to some really cool people, got some really cool insights, learned about a bunch of new games coming out soon, thanks to Gamescom. And hopefully, after you listen to this, you'll pick up Raji and give it a shot. I definitely recommend you do that. For Fox PHL The Gambler on 102.5 FM Philadelphia and for iHeartRadio, I am Esports and Gaming Insider Jason Fanelli signing off. Have a great week, and we will do it all again on Cheesesteaks and Controllers next week. See you later.